This year's US Open at Shinnecock Hills carries a weight that golf fans cannot ignore, and the reason goes back to the disaster of 2018, when this course turned into a nightmare for every single player who walked onto it. The greens dried out so fast that putting became nearly impossible. Phil Mickelson lost his composure so badly that he hit a moving ball just to stop the chaos. Andy North called it live on air, saying the course had basically died right in front of everyone watching. The USGA later admitted privately that both 2004 and 2018 were embarrassing failures for the organization, and that admission is exactly why every player walked into this year's championship expecting something brutal all over again. But what they found this time was completely different, and nobody saw it coming. Instead of repeating the punishing setup that destroyed careers and scorecards in 2018, the USGA flipped the entire approach upside down. They widened the fairways dramatically, making them the widest this course has seen in possibly 75 years. John Bowden, who oversees the course setup, confirmed that fairways will now average around 48 yards across, which is much closer to how Shinnecock was originally designed before the USGA narrowed everything down for previous championships. His message was simple. They wanted to let Shinnecock be Shinnecock again, instead of forcing it into a punishing narrow corridor that only rewards the most mechanically perfect ball strikers. On the surface, this sounds like relief for the players and like good news for anyone hoping to see a more enjoyable tournament. More room off the tee should mean fewer disasters right from the start. But this is exactly where the trap begins, because the real test at Shinnecock was never about the fairways. It was always about what happens after the fairway, and this year, that danger has only intensified. Rory McIlroy was among the first players to walk the course this week, and his reaction tells you everything you need to know. He said the fairways feel far more generous than they did back in 2018, which on its own sounds encouraging. But then he added the detail that changes the entire conversation. He explained that the rough sitting right next to those generous fairways is nearly 5 inches deep. Miss the fairway by even a single yard, and you are not just facing a tough shot, you are essentially finished for that hole. His exact words were blunt. If you miss, you deserve the bad lie you get. That statement alone shows how players are being given more room to work with, but that room comes paired with a punishment. Most of them were not mentally prepared for walking in. And that is only half of the danger waiting on this course. Scottie Scheffler, the current world #1, admitted he was caught off guard by just how much space there was off the tee. But he immediately pointed to the real threat, which is the greens themselves. He called them some of the most difficult greens he has ever played in his career. He explained that once a player misses the fairway here, there is essentially no recovery possible. The rough already punishes that mistake severely, and then the greens finish the job by making any approach shot nearly impossible to control. So the bigger question becomes obvious. Did the USGA actually make Shinnecock easier this year? Or did they simply relocate the danger to a place where players cannot see it coming until it is already too late? Picture a player who hits a confident drive into one of these new, wide fairways. He feels relaxed walking up the hole, maybe even comfortable for the first time in years on this course. Then he reaches the green and realizes the real fight has not even started. These greens are not just firm or fast, they are designed to break confidence completely. The USGA has the freedom to place the pin anywhere they choose, including slopes and corners, where even a technically perfect approach shot can roll 20 feet away from the hole. Scheffler said it plainly. The USGA could push scores as high as they wanted, simply by choosing where to place the flag on any given day. That is the real trade hidden inside this new setup. Wide fairways up front, followed by brutal, unforgiving punishment everywhere else on the hole. This dynamic creates 9 completely different stories for 9 of the biggest names walking into this championship, and each one carries its own weight. Scheffler is chasing something almost nobody in golf history ever gets the chance to chase, which is the career Grand Slam. A win here would make him only the 7th golfer ever to complete it, and remarkably, the final round falls exactly on his 30th birthday. It is the kind of storyline that writes itself in golf history books. But here is the complication. This is his very first time ever seeing these specific greens in tournament conditions, and he has already admitted publicly that they caught him off guard. That combination of history pressure and an unfamiliar puzzle all happening at once makes his week one of the most fascinating to watch. Then there is Rory McIlroy, who is not chasing history this time, but trying to escape a painful memory instead. He missed the cut at Shinnecock back in 2018, and that kind of failure does not simply disappear from a player's mind. He arrives this year with strong momentum, coming off back-to-back Masters victories and playing arguably the best golf of his career. But there is a concerning detail working against him. His own former agent has suggested publicly that Shinnecock's conditions may not actually suit the way Rory strikes the ball off the tee. If that turns out to be true, then all this extra fairway space might not even matter much for his particular game. Few stories carry more heartbreak than Tommy Fleetwood's connection to this golf course. Back in 2018, he shot an incredible 63 in the final round, which set a course record that still stands as one of the great rounds in major championship history. And despite that masterpiece, he still lost the tournament by a single shot. Think about what that means. He played the round of his life on the biggest stage, and it still was not enough to win. That kind of memory does not fade away easily. It quietly follows him every single time he steps back onto this property, and this week is no exception. While Fleetwood battles his own history, Bryson DeChambeau is walking into a completely different kind of test. His entire career has been built around one simple philosophy, which is hit the ball as far as humanly possible and figure out the rest of the game afterward. That formula has already earned him 2 US Open titles in the past. But here lies the problem at a course specifically designed to punish players through its greens. Rather than its length, does raw power even matter as much anymore? This week could become the first real evidence of whether his explosive style has a vulnerability that nobody has fully exposed until now. Brooks Koepka enters with an entirely different storyline because he has already won a US Open on this exact golf course. On paper, Shinnecock should suit him perfectly since he understands its demands and has already proven he can conquer it. But he is coming off a complicated stretch of his career while juggling a packed schedule just to remain competitive. So the real question is not whether Koepka can handle this course mentally or physically. It is whether he is finding his peak form at exactly the right moment or running out of momentum right before the most important week of his entire year. Other players are stepping into challenges they have never personally faced on this property. Jon Rahm's natural game could genuinely benefit from these wider fairways since they suit his aggressive style off the tee. But Shinnecock's greens have historically destroyed players who rely heavily on feel and delicate touch around the hole, and that happens to be exactly where Rahm's biggest strength lies. Xander Schauffele has an almost unbelievable record of never finishing outside the top 14 at any US Open in his career, but he has never experienced a version of Shinnecock quite like this one either. Cameron Young actually grew up near this golf course, which means the crowd support comfort level and local knowledge could genuinely matter more for him than for almost anyone else competing this week. And then there is Matt Fitzpatrick, who has already proven on a major stage that he can win a brutally difficult green-focused US Open. Out of this entire group of contenders, he might honestly be the quiet threat that nobody is talking about enough heading into the week. So now you understand exactly what 9 of golf's biggest names are walking into this week at Shinnecock Hills. But there is one more variable in this entire story that nobody on the USGA committee or in the player field can actually control, and that variable is the weather itself. Shinnecock sits between 2 bodies of water on sandy soil that dries out incredibly fast under any sustained heat or wind. A small shift in conditions, a bit more wind or a bit more sun, and the entire character of the course can transform within just a few hours. Bowden himself acknowledged that conditions can change so quickly that if a player or even the USGA setup team falls behind, it becomes almost impossible to catch back up during the championship. So really this week is not simply about 9 elite players adjusting to wider fairways and learning a new version of an old golf course. It is about whether the USGA has genuinely learned from its past mistakes at this exact location, or whether Shinnecock Hills is about to do exactly what it has always done throughout its history, which is expose every single player no matter how confident or prepared they believe themselves to be walking in. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure you are subscribed here at PGA Updates Hub because Championship Week is going to bring constant changes and storylines worth tracking closely. Drop your own prediction in the comments. Do these wider fairways actually help the field this year, or are they quietly setting up an even bigger disaster than what happened back in 2018? PGA Updates Hub will be here all week breaking down everything that unfolds at Shinnecock Hills.